I was Instagramming us that we were live.
Failing.
And Insta failing while we're a few minutes late. All right. Hi there, Tackler. Welcome to Disney Deep Dive, where each week we dive into the history, stories, and details of the Disney parks. I am Leah, and I have my voice back. Yay!
And I'm Stefan, and I'm not really that sick.
Yeah, we have had a little bit of craziness go through our house. We were sick. Our middle child, Connor, who does have special needs and he can't clear very well, had pneumonia. And then now our other two are sick with a totally different bug. So if you're a parent, you feel us, hang in there till holiday break, people. Just hang in there. But today, we're going to be talking about the Jungle Cruise. I'm really excited. I've been waiting for this
We're back with an actual ride.
Yes, yeah.
Woo! After like nearly a month. Woohoo! I was looking at all the outlines because I just read them in a Google Doc, and it tells me the last time I opened one, and it was like almost a month ago, and I was like, oops.
Yeah, but we've had okay, so last week it was rough. We were both rough. It was short. We do appreciate though that you guys hung out there with us because we still wanted to go live. And today we weren't sure what was going to happen. I thought maybe I was going to do some trivia again, which I had fun when I did that. Yeah, that was 3 weeks ago. Maybe you were sick, and because Stefan was going to have to go to jury duty, but luckily didn't happen. So
here we are.
Here we are to talk about the Jungle Cruise. Usually with rides or attractions, we talk first about our own our personal experiences. So what's your personal story with the Jungle Cruise?
Well, I remember going on it, as usual, the Disney World version when I was a kid, and I don't remember it being like, I don't have any like spectacular memories about it. I for some reason I remember in particular the guys on the pole, like the safari guys on the pole with the rhino like up on them. But that's really the only part I remember in particular. I know I went on it, I know I saw it, and I was like, oh neat, and that was it. So that's my experience.
Yes, mine is, so we will get into this in a minute, but my experience was, I remember going, so I was 11, so I was a little bit older than you would have been the first time I went to Disney. And I remember that this was a ride that I didn't know about. I'd never gone to the parks before. It wasn't like as accessible. I might have seen it in a video, one of those where they would send you the VHS tapes and then eventually the DVDs, the planning videos, which I watched a ton because pre-YouTube. And I remember that my dad was very excited about this ride. And again, we're going to get into that, but because when he was a kid, there were a lot of specials on TV, and one of them was about the Jungle Cruise. And so he was really excited to go on that. And it was interesting to hear his perspective, which I'm going to save for when we jump into that part. But I remember being excited, thinking it was a really cool ride, and kind of knowing even back then, which that was, gosh, what would have that been? About 20 years ago, a little over 20 years ago. I remember thinking this is a special classic ride then, and so now it's just even more so. It's just quintessential. So
hopping right in. The Jungle Cruise, if you don't know, is a riverboat attraction that opened in 1955 in Adventureland that simulates a riverboat cruise down several major rivers in Asia, Africa, and South America.
Yes.
So it's a Jungle Cruise.
Yes. And so to start it all off, way back in 1948, Walt decided to start producing films or live action documentary-like films. And then,
if you remember when we talked about the Imagineering story, they said that due to like union strikes and like the cost of animation at the time, it was just so expensive. He decided to move more into live action stuff. So he moved into this whole like, I don't know exactly the story around it, but eventually got into this documentary type
true life adventure, he called it.
Yeah, where it was documenting. At first there was like, people and stuff involved, but then he decided like, well, no, the animals and things are way more interesting. So they focused more on like the animal and the animal life and the nature and like these different parts of the world. And yeah, it was a series called True Life Adventure, and there was like 17 of them or something, 17 or 18. They just showcased like different areas of the world, exploring like all the nature and the animals that live there. There is one, and I remember seeing this when I was a little kid too. like I was at like an aunt and uncle's house or something,
Which aunt
and
and uncle? Yeah.
it was somewhere random, like on the East Coast or
Oh,
something.
so not someone I not
No,
like,
no,
okay,
no.
not someone I
It
hang
was
out with
somewhere
regularly.
random.
Okay.
But my parents were like hanging out with them, so I was just like watching their TV, and I was watching the Disney Channel like in the mid afternoon
1990s.
on like a Saturday.
Yeah.
And one of these documentaries was on, and it was, I have it written down here. Oh, it was the White Wilderness one, which is infamous for having the lemmings running off a ledge scene. Which has since been debunked. Like lemmings don't actually run off a ledge. It's like a old like wise tale that they then like made happen. I remember
Or in
seeing
the
this whole
film.
thing about how they developed it too. Like there was a wheel they had them all on that they were like running onto that would throw them off the ledge or
Which
something.
is really interesting too, because if you think about, because now, Disney has done some beautiful, I mean, they're just breathtaking, the different, wildlife things that you can see. And it's just funny to think, because, the ones that you see now are more like National Geographic-esque, but, with that Disney touch. Whereas these are like, they're forcing these animals to do things that they wouldn't actually be happening.
So that was just like one of like the more infamous things where they were like, lemmings run off a cliff. Let's show that happen, but it wasn't an actual thing. So they didn't actually come up with that idea. Anyway, I saw that when I was a kid, so I thought it was funny. They had other titles such as Seal Island, In Beaver Valley, Nature's Half Acre, White Wilderness, and the African Lion. The African Lion, which eventually became one of the inspirations for the Jungle Cruise, an inspiration for the theming of it.
Yes, and these were super, super popular documentaries. And especially, you have to think of the time when people were seeing this. They didn't have access to this. They didn't see these parts of the world. So it was really, really cool. They won a bunch of awards. They were really popular. And this was during the planning stages of Disneyland Adventureland.
And at the time, it was so popular that they wanted to take these documentaries and put them into like real life, into Adventureland. To the point where it was originally going to be called True Life Adventureland. So it was going to be a land based off of the
documentaries.
Yeah, these movies.
Yeah.
So the original idea was to bring to life the documentary series and create an area where people could be immersed into like a real life jungle surrounded by actual animals, where they would be educated and entertained. Basically, they wanted to bring the movie to life, or the documentary series to life in this area. It was quickly
And also for
decided-
branding, too. I mean, just from the branding standpoint.
Yeah, just, they have movies and now you can come visit for real.
Exactly.
It was quickly decided, though, that the actual live animals wouldn't be feasible because they wanted to have actual live animals around in the park. And at the time, they said, like, well, no, they're going to be sleeping, like, when you want people to see them. It's going to be super expensive to take care of them. You don't want to run a zoo and a theme park. It doesn't make sense.
Which I think is so interesting because I think that, and I've thought this for a long time, just the more I hear about Walt and what he really wanted out of these rides and how he wanted the Jungle Cruise to be originally, which we'll talk about, but I think the Animal Kingdom would have been his favorite park.
Mm-hmm. But it wasn't feasible until later on.
Yeah.
So because Walt wanted to control like every aspect of the guest experience, which we've seen in other rides, it was decided that animatronic animals would be used in place of real ones. So anywhere where they'd plan on having real animals, it would just be an animatronic one. And this is pre-audio animatronics, so this is not like super advanced, audio animatronic type technology. It's just robots.
Yeah, so like
straight up
heads
robots
going up and down, very simple.
Yeah, doing simple like 1, 2, like ABC motions. Nothing super complicated like at all. So the initial concept was developed when like Walt knew basically from the beginning when he started making the park, he wanted some sort of boat ride in Adventureland because from the beginning when it was mapped out, Adventureland was always going to be a part of it. And he knew, okay, we have to have some sort of boat ride. Like he hadn't called it the Jungle Cruise, but knew I want to have a Jungle Cruise in this area of the park. So he enlisted Harper Goff to help him bring the ride to life, who is a Disney legend we've mentioned many times before. He's worked on what was the one we talked about? Because he was a set designer on Casablanca, and on that episode I mentioned that I love Casablanca. But
The Pirates? No,
I'm sure he was involved in Pirates in some way.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember specifically what else he was involved in, but he was there from the very beginning. So, and he worked like, he's not like the other Imagineers who were like there like ride or die like the entire time, like their entire career. It was like an on and off again thing where he like worked with Disney, didn't work with Disney, basically his entire life. But he had a lot of fingers in a lot of pots as far as the creation of Disney World. So Harper drew heavy inspiration from the 1951 film The African Queen, one of my other favorite movies next to Casablanca, when he was designing the ride. And the vehicles for the ride are actually designed after the steamer boat, which was called the African Queen in the movie, from the movie. So when you see that movie and you see that boat, that's where he got the design for the boats from, is he basically just pulled it right off of there.
Yeah.
So some of the initial design work was like done, ideas were being put together, and they had this general idea of what the Jungle Cruise was going to look like. They had like a lot of sketches, and they knew what it would be. They had the design mapped up, even though it wasn't like plotted out like how they would today, where like they have an idea and they get like a drawing and then they render it in a 3D model and then they computer animate it to make sure everything's going to work right. They just basically had a loose feel of like it's going to be like this probably.
Yes, a little bit loosey goosey here. There's a couple more parts of this ride that seem kind of like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it was decided, like early on though, that in order to create a realistic like jungle ambiance, that you were going through a jungle, construction would have to begin immediately before they even had any plants on the table. This was part of it, so that the plants and trees could go in first
and have time to grow.
Yeah, because they wanted them to like grow in and look like overgrown and like unkempt, so to add to the jungle atmosphere. So they had to begin right away.
Yep. So in 1954, construction on Disneyland began, and originally Adventureland was planned to be where Tomorrowland actually ended up. Mm-hmm. But because there was already an existing, I love this part, I want to make sure I read it right, patch of eucalyptus trees, and then there were other foliage and things like that in the back corner, they decided that that's where they'd put Adventureland because they already had all of that greenery and jungle-like elements. So they wouldn't have, they'd still have to plant some, but they already had some right there.
Yeah, so if you look at old maps, like you look at like the map of the original like park, how they had it planned out, Adventureland was like here in the front, but ended up being back here just because they had all of the trees and stuff, because they, it was built on an old like farmland. So all of Disneyland was built on old farmland. So they had all these trees and bushes and shrubs and stuff in the back. And they said, okay, well, we can use that. So let's just, switch these around and we'll put that back there. So as crews got ready to dig the canal for the ride, they realized that they didn't really have any actual plans.
Here comes more loosey-goosey part. This is my favorite part of this entire thing.
So they didn't have like a blueprint to follow. There was nothing like mapped out. And they were like, okay, what do we do?
Yeah.
So Harper Goff again was on the scene, and he knew how he wanted it to look. He knew the general like idea of like, okay, well, here's where it's going to go. So
let me read it. That's my favorite part. Can I read it? Yeah. So the story goes that Harper Goff picked up a stick, went through the dirt with his stick, sketching out how he wanted the outlining, the route of the ride, and then told him to dig it out. Go for it.
Yeah, so he draws an outline, says, just dig this. This is the path. And that's what they start doing. They start digging that path. I don't know how true that is, or if that's like all there was to the story. It seems like there's probably more, because that line would not last. And it would probably take them more than a day to dig that. So I imagine they had some sort of plan. But that's the story people tell, and that's probably how it started. He probably was like, it will just start here.
Yes.
There you go.
I am being reminded, I didn't even mention this at the beginning, we are live right now, and we will hop over to the live chat from time to time. If you are watching the replay, let us know in the comments where you are watching from. Let us know if you have ever ridden the Jungle Cruise, and if so, which park you have ridden it at, or in multiple parks if that's the case. And I want to say hello to Gigi. Gigi said she's never seen Casablanca. You must see that. It's on my list. Stefan, no Casa and no Star Wars. Oh no, he doesn't hate you. That's a little strong, but maybe he
I
thinks
don't
that
hate you.
You need, no. We love you, Gigi.
Everyone has different tastes. You can watch whatever you want.
But, well, no, she did tell us, though, that she watched a Star Wars Thanksgiving, or pre-Thanksgiving, when she was doing Thanksgiving prep. So, yeah. We should watch Casablanca. I haven't watched that in forever.
We have it. I own it on a special 2-disc DVD edition.
You and my dad. Those faves. All right.
So as the canal was being dug, Walt tasked Bill Evans with, actually he was the man responsible for landscaping Disneyland and most of Disney World. So real good landscaper.
Not Bob Evans.
No, Bill Evans. Bob Evans makes
I want to go make biscuits.
delicious sausage. But Bill Evans was tasked with creating a convincing jungle on a limited budget. And when we say limited budget, we mean very limited. Because, as we've discussed before, the creation of Disneyland was incredibly expensive. It went way over budget, like multiple times. And Imagineers, they weren't Imagineers at the time, but Imagineers had to be incredibly frugal and creative and resourceful while building the attractions that they had to build because they didn't have any money for anything.
Yeah,
like,
if you watch the
super
Imagineering story.
Oh yeah, they go over it in detail. But yeah, there wasn't a lot of leftover money to like do all sorts of fun, crazy stuff, so they had to be very creative. Which is, I think, that's one of the things that like set the tone for that whole department because it's something they do to this day, where they're like incredibly creative with how they do things and the way they do things. And it's not always to save money. It is sometimes, but sometimes it's like, well, there's just a better way to do it, so we do it that way.
I really think of it. You know how you always hear about like millionaires and billionaires who shop sales or like they still like do these frugal things, but then you hear the person who wins some giant jackpot and then they blow it all. I think that's so true because you got to keep some of those things up. You got to repurpose things and shop smart and do all that stuff to keep your money.
So Bill Evans used what already existed within the park, like we said. He bought what he could from like local tree nurseries and plant nurseries. He picked up plants and trees from people's yards who wanted them removed. So there's a story that he was like checking papers or something for like people like wanted ads for like tree or plant removal services. And then he was like going to people's houses and like, hey, do you want that? And they were
That's
like,
pretty cool.
I'll remove it for free, and would take it and remove it. So he sourced plants and trees from lots of different areas. And then he got really creative with his character plants. Now, the character plants are, they're things that were added to look exotic and like mysterious while being like just regular plants. So he did stuff like he would take, I can't remember what kind of tree it was. If it was like an oak tree or something, but he would take like stumps and like put them in the setting in a way where they look like really exotic, like, ooh, look at that, look at that crazy plant over there. The most famous one is he took orange trees and turned them upside down to create a mangrove look, which if you've never seen a mangrove, it's those plants where like they're in water, but they're like sitting, like the roots are all like up above water, and then the trees and the plant part is like on top of it. Look it up.
I've seen those. I didn't know that was what they were called.
So he created those by turning orange trees upside down. So just got super, super creative and resourceful in creating these different things to make this jungle atmosphere, which was incredibly convincing to pretty much anyone who showed up. So today, I don't know how much they add to it or like take away, but as of like recently, there's over 700 trees. 700.
That's amazing.
More than 40 different types of plants. So I'm sure they keep adding to it, like here and there.
They must.
Yeah, but it's well overgrown at this point and looks more like a jungle than ever.
Yes, and what's really cool about this ride is that you can see a lot of this footage because progress was moving along really quickly, and then it was documented really heavily because if you've looked at that footage or the Imagineering story or things like that, all these shorts that Walt was producing about the production and the construction of the park and all the new rides and things like that, and they did a lot. Like they were heavy with Jungle Cruise coverage.
Yeah, because one of the ways they got funding was Walt made a deal with like CBS or ABC or so, one of the networks that, hey, we'll produce a show for you showing you how we're building the park. You just have to pay us, yada, yada, yada. So they were paying them to basically make the show and make the park to produce the show that they were paying them for. So it's a real funny roundabout way, but obviously it's a really good business move on Walt's part. But they were documenting everything. And because the Jungle Cruise was going to be well, it wasn't the only planned ride, but it was going to be the only active ride in Adventureland when Disneyland opened. They were pumping it heavily to be like, hey, Jungle Cruise, Jungle Cruise, Jungle
Be
Cruise.
excited about this.
Yeah,
Come
get excited,
to see
come
this.
check it out, visit, ride it multiple times.
Tell your friends.
So they were putting lots and lots of publicity and emphasis on the Jungle Cruise,
Yes.
which is nice because there's also all this leftover like remnants of footage. In fact, actually, during one of those shows where they're showing it off, after the canal was dug, because Walt was like super proud that they got it done so fast. He drove. I put his car, but it wasn't his car. But he drove a car because the show was being sponsored by a car company. So he drove their car through the canal, like the excavated canal, to show them like, here's where the boats are going to be, and here's where that's going to be.
Yeah.
So another super awesome business move. So once water started flowing through the ride, they decided to dye it. So the water in the Jungle Cruise is dyed to hide everything underneath it, because obviously the alligators and the crocodiles and the hippos and now the piranhas and things, and even the boat all have things underneath.
Yeah.
That would give it away.
That's really smart.
So they dyed the water so that it wasn't like so like opaque, so that you could see right through it, so that it was
you
muddy.
couldn't see all the they try to hide the
to hide
giveaways.
to hide the what's behind the curtain.
Yeah.
The entire water system initially it was dyed brown. That was their first color. They went like a muddy, gross brown color, which is actually the color that most of those rivers that they're trying to emulate are, just because of all the clay and the mud and stuff that they run through.
Yeah.
But they decided that was kind of gross, so it was then changed to like a green hue, and in recent years more of like a bluish green. So I haven't really seen it, but maybe like a teal or a turquoise.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. I'm going to hop over to the live chat, and Gigi says, all great things go over budget, require resourcefulness. The tale of how Disneyland came to be is really inspiring. Yeah, it is really cool, especially because I think it is one of those things, and we've mentioned this before, but how, people hear Disney and they think, okay, whatever, they can afford anything. Or when a movie goes, doesn't, kind of bombs the box office, or when something like this happens. But it wasn't, yes, it was doing well. Yes, it was making money. But at the time, Disney, this had never been done. They hadn't done anything like this. So it was a humongous risk.
It could have, this was
could have ruined him in the company.
Yeah, the end of the company or the start of something bigger.
Which we know how that ended up.
Yeah, but it was one or the other. Like at the time, they didn't know what it was going to be.
Yeah.
So staying on the water system, because it's actually super interesting about like the water system in the park itself and how it works. So to give like a quick explanation about it, the water of the Jungle Cruise, it's about like 5 feet deep throughout the entire cruise, and it's part of the park's dark water system, which is their water system that circulates throughout the entire park. Let's see, where does it start? It circulates southward from the northern end of Frontierland's Rivers of America through Fantasyland, and it creates the moat of Sleeping Beauty's castle. It continues flowing past Frontierland's entrance and into Adventureland, where it goes alongside the Tiki Room before it enters the Jungle Cruise beside the ride's exit. And then the water returns to the south end of the Rivers of America via a underground pipe near Tarzan's treehouse. Now, this is like the modern day route, but even back then, all the water, so like the water around the castle, all that water was the same water, circling and cycling through the park in one giant river, which is something I didn't know until looking into this. So they had this giant river system that they built just to keep everything, full and moving, and I just thought it was super interesting.
It is.
There's really nothing else about it other than I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, but always going back to, imagine them thinking that all out and having to, they had to connect all these big attractions. Even Sleeping Beauty Castle was, the moat. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it seems like there should be a lot more to it, but they just did it. I don't know, they just ended up doing it. So all the animatronics for the ride, they were all developed in studio. Like we said, real simple. Just, animals moving left, right, up, down,
Yeah.
opening their mouths, closing, nodding their heads.
And something different for this attraction versus a lot of other ones that we've talked about is that they really didn't have any problems. It was like, okay, no big design struggle, no big issue. We're going to open on time, and there we go. Open for the grand opening.
It seemed like all the planning that they had done was set up in the right way, and everything went according to schedule, and it went as smoothly as they possibly could have asked for it. And yeah, it was one of the opening day rides at Disneyland, and it was the flagship ride, like you said, for Adventureland because it was the only ride in there at the time. And it was immediately a massive success. It saw lots and lots of people coming into it, and everything went off without a hitch. So it was a really big thing for them. But
big sighs of relief from everyone.
Yeah, but that was only for a limited amount of time because, like we said, Walt wanted this to be initially like a documentary. He wanted it to be one of his documentaries come to life.
Yes.
And the problem with that is how many times have you rewatched a documentary? Because I can think of maybe one in my entire life that I've watched more than once. But if it's like a nature documentary, you watch it once and you're like, oh, that was neat. You never watch it again because why would you? It's boring. You've already seen those pictures.
Yeah, you've taken what you're going to take. You're influenced if you're going to be influenced. And
yeah, there's nothing else there. And that's what was happening with the ride. People were riding the ride and then didn't really have any reason to ride it again because nothing was really blowing them away. It wasn't entertaining enough to be like, oh, let's go on that again.
Because it wasn't meant to be, like it was meant, like what Stefan said, to be documentary style. So what we mean when we say that is instead of, and we're going to get into that, but instead of all the funny little jokes and little, one-liners, it was very serious. It was, you were supposed to be learning about these animals.
So, obviously, despite its success, the ride did see a dip in guest attendance after a while, and soon it became apparent that a strictly serious edutainment type ride was not going to keep the guests coming back for more. So Walt tasked Mark Davis, who again
a name he mentioned almost every episode,
with the role of adding some humor and levity into the ride to keep it entertaining. So what Mark did is he ended up adding a few different segments to the ride, such as the elephant bathing pool where the elephants are spraying water. And the rhinoceros chasing explorers up a pole that I mentioned before. That was his idea.
Yeah.
And then the script for the skippers of the boats, was updated to include jokes, terrible puns, and
they're punny.
Just silly jokes. And to this day, so at first they did have a script, like a strict skip. Strict script that the skippers would go off of that they had to read with the jokes built in. Very quickly, people started developing their own versions of the script and their own takes on the jokes, and that's something that happens to this day. Like every skipper on the Jungle Cruise has their own shtick and their own joke and their own line of jokes, their own thing that they say,
and people love it because it's a new experience every time.
Yeah, exactly. It makes it's like, so no matter how many times you go on it, unless you get the same person again, you're going to hear a different version, someone telling a different kind of joke, and they all develop it themselves. So it's really cool because it's not like something like Disney comes in and says, okay, you're going to say this and you're going to say this. They come up with it all on their own.
It's like the safari ride. If you've been to Disney World at Disney's Animal Kingdom, the safari ride is like that as well. Sip it.
My mouth is getting very dry. So very quickly, the ride went from taking itself extremely seriously to becoming more lighthearted, with a bunch of self-contained in-jokes. And I'm pretty sure that's what continued to contribute to its success. When you look at it on the whole, there's no reason this ride should still exist, really, because there's nothing ultra entertaining about it. It hasn't gotten any giant overhaul where it's oh man, remember how it used to be? Now it's like this. You would think maybe it's because there's a river there, but
people are intense about it though. I mean, it is maybe not quite, but it is tiki room level. People are dedicated.
And I know there's a following, but still, it just seems like at some point it would have gotten some sort of overhaul or overlay or something. Yeah. But I think because it's so self-contained, and it's each ride is its own individual ride and has its own unique history with the way the cast members create their own stories. That's what's kept it alive. So making that change from like super serious
Right.
to like, let's just have fun with it. Like that is what has made it, or had it maintain itself.
Well, and really, I mean, they could have easily gone in, or they still could go in and make these animal animatronics so much more realistic, so much more detailed, all of these things. But I think that having the skippers and stuff keeps them from feeling the need to do that as well. Plus, people love the classic, just simple things. It's what the ride is.
So, even though I said it hasn't had a giant overhaul, it has had a lot of updates and refurbishments. So we're going to go through these. We're
taking these every other or something? What are we doing? Oh, Lord. Okay.
Yeah, we can do that.
All right.
So, 1957. Ride opened in 1955. 1957. They had it says addition of rainforest. I think they just mean like they added like rainforest type elements to the ride. There was a pair of menacing gorillas they added, a native war party and dancing natives, and Trader Sam begins offering his 2-for-1 deal. So, two shrunken heads for yours.
Price of one. Yep. So then in 1961, the original 2-story boathouse was actually removed, and an open waterway between the Jungle Cruise and the Rivers of America filled in to create space for one of my favorites, the Swiss Family Robinson walk-through attraction, which is now Tarzan's Treehouse at Disneyland.
In 1962, a $7 million enhancement of Adventureland included the addition of the Elephant Pool and Temple of Ganesha Lost City Cambodian ruin scenes along the Jungle Cruise.
Yep. Then in 1963, African elephants repositioned on the Nile River section, removal of 2 original lions, and a pair of charging rhinos.
In 64, African veldt and trapped safari scenes. I don't know what that means.
It was just on the list, huh?
Yeah, it was just on the list.
All right.
I just copy and pasted it. So.
1967, addition and enhancement of several scenes. The crocodile snapping at Hornville, the Indonesian Chinese, I'm assuming, tiger, cobras added to the Cambodian ruins, safari camp overrun by gorillas battling crocodile, baboons on termite mounds, lions feasting on zebra, moved into new rock outcropping den, python threatening water buffalo calf, replacing gorillas threatening from the riverbanks. A lot of stuff happened in 76. Okay.
And that must have been a really big overhaul, because then nothing really happened until 1993.
Wait some time.
Which, if you watched the last real episode we did about Indiana Jones Adventure,
stop calling the episodes without you fake
I was
episodes.
in them. It's just the real ride episode with a script.
I think that my trivia episode was a smashing success, but I missed you.
So in 93, the boats were repainted and they were like weathered to look like kind of old to match the
They
scenery.
farmhoused the boats.
Yeah, the scenery of the Indiana Jones Adventure ride that was coming into the land. Because if you remember from that show, we talk about how they share a portion of like the river and the ride, and they kind of like intermingle cues and stuff. So they updated the Jungle Cruise in some aspects to match the look of that, which I think looks really cool.
Yeah,
it's because when you look at it before that, it was still really like crisp and clean. Like the boats had that like candy striper look still, but I like the old like weathered it looks more like the
believable.
Yeah, like you're going on like an old busted down boat down a jungle river. So.
Yeah. Like you've signed up for some really expensive excursion, then you see the postcard of the original boat, and then you get on and it's like the weather boat. That's what it is.
Yes.
That is what it is.
Good scene from a movie.
Yeah. 1994, an addition of a 2-story boathouse queue, attraction rethemed to take place in June 1938, which was to coincide with construction of Indiana Jones Adventure.
And like I said, that 2-story boathouse queue was so that it would hold overflow from both rides, from Indiana Jones and Jungle Cruise, which is kind of cool. In 1997, the replacement of the original ride boats with slightly longer models was added, and those had an increased capacity to just deal with all the people who were coming into the parks. So they replaced the boats.
In 2005, various replacements and reconstructions, including a complete replacement of
Schweitzer.
Thank you. Schweitzer Falls, addition of piranhas, updates to the Safari Jeep camp scene, including exploding gasoline drums.
And I think the piranhas are, I didn't realize that was such a new addition. I think it was one of my favorite parts, just how they're just like jumping out of the water at the boat. I don't know why, I just like that a lot. Let's see, 2010, after 55 years of growth and care, Disneyland's man-made jungle is declared real and complete with its own ecosystem. So this is not an update.
That is so cool.
Just after 55 years of growing, someone who has this authority came in and said, okay, no, this is just a real jungle now, and it has its own ecosystem. So it's a legitimate jungle cruise.
That's amazing. That's so cool.
That's super cool.
I wonder when Disney Worlds could be that. How long?
Pretty soon.
Soon, probably. Mm-hmm.
Was it 72?
I think that's what we said, yeah.
71, 72? Yeah.
Pretty cool. All right. In 2013, during the holiday season, I love this. Also, if you haven't watched videos of what I'm about to tell you, it's amazing. I want to do this. I have not ridden it at the holidays, but during the holiday season, the Jungle Cruise is turned into the Jingle Cruise, a new Christmassy overlay. This did not see many changes to the jungle itself, other than the skippers using a holiday-themed script, but the boathouse is decorated and the boats were renamed temporarily, and then they're covered in Christmas lights. Love it, love it, love it. So fun.
The following year, in 2014, the Holiday Jingle Cruise overlay is redone, and it is much more dramatic from the previous year. This time, there is very little decoration on the boats and in the boathouse itself, but instead, the various show scenes out in the jungle are covered in Christmas and Hanukkah decorations.
My favorite.
The skippers are given another new script, one that reflects the various holiday-themed show scenes and that the boats move through. The Jungle Cruise is also given a new story, which is a shipment of holiday supplies intended for the skippers crash landed in the jungle instead, and the skippers are taking their passengers out to go find the decorations. The boats are also given new holiday names, different from the ones used from the previous year.
In 2015, the Jingle Cruise overlay from 2014 was reused for the 2015 holiday season, using the 2014 script, boat names, and show scenes. There was one new scene added involving giant snowmen and snowflakes on the termite mounds by the African belt.
Yeah, I think I read that they just turned the termite mounds into snowmen. Like they built the snowmen around the mounds. But that might not be right. I'm not sure. I didn't see pictures of it. I just read it. And then in 2016, a 4-month refurbishment lasting from January until May included a new dock design to stabilize the boats while loading and unloading, as well as some mechanical animal repairs, replacement of the on-ride audio systems, and tree replacements. So just a lot of updates and replacements. And
yes.
Yada, yada, yada.
I'm going to hop back to the live chat because my mother, his mother-in-law, just hopped on, or at least she just commented, maybe she has been watching, but she said creating a real jungle is so awesome. And I always think about, well, I guess my mom, but mostly my dad when we talk about this ride, and because I will never forget being a kid and having him go on it. And he wasn't disappointed, I wouldn't quite say, maybe a little bit, but he was just, because he had seen as a child the documentary style videos on TV. And then, many years passed in between that. He took his wife and his 2 kids. We all went on a trip together to Disney, and he had an idea of what it was going to be like. And then we went on it, and there were all these jokes and stuff. And so it was just, I think, a little shocking for him. And I know that totally dates my dad, but whatever, it's fine. But I think that because of that story, because of him telling me how much he loved watching that as a kid, like that's probably a special part of Disney to him, even though he's not a huge Disney fan by any means. So I'll always think of my dad when we talk about Jungle Cruise.
And we can't mention the Jungle Cruise without mentioning that there is a movie coming out featuring The Rock and...
The Rock. I mean, do we have to say more?
Who was Mary Poppins?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah,
The
but
Rock and Mary Poppins.
well, Mary Poppins
New Mary
returns.
Poppins.
Yes, yeah.
And so I've only watched the trailer for it, the one trailer, and it looks really funny.
It won't be up if you're watching live, but I will put it soon in the description box when we have the replay up. I will put a link to the trailer because it does look really good. When does that come out? It's kind of soon.
Next year or something?
Yeah. So not super far off.
Yeah, but it does look hilarious, and it's The Rock, and like, I mean, he's obviously in Jumanji.
Well, and I love
he had
the new
movie,
Jumanji.
like The Rundown, and like he's so good at that stuff. Oh my god. Yeah, it's so perfect.
It is.
So I'm excited for that. I don't know if I'll see it in theaters, but it's definitely a renter. What?
I'll see it in theaters. Shoot.
I got Star Wars to see.
Oh man, yeah. Let us know if you are going to be seeing Star Wars in theaters.
Mm-hmm.
Force Awakens. Let us know. Yeah, I probably will not because I'll be with our kids, and but I will be watching Mandalorian tomorrow night. If you're watching that, let us know.
Oh, I forgot.
New Mandalorian.
Friday.
Yes, we're really enjoying that. I am getting excited for Mandalorian. It is so good.
Left. I think there's only like 2 left or something.
For this season, they're already filming.
Yeah. For this season, there's something
Yes.
in my hand.
Hopefully not a splinter. But yes, let us know if you've ever been on the Jungle Cruise, which park you have been on the Jungle Cruise, and what you think about it. And also, if you've been on the Jingle Cruise, I would like to know that since I'm such a...
And there isn't a Jungle Cruise in every park.
Oh, yes.
Disneyland Paris doesn't have one, obviously, because it snows there. Even though they had planned for one to be there originally, which I'm wondering, like, what were you thinking? It snows. It gets cold there. Like, the water will freeze.
It would be... Yeah, they would have to do something indoors, which then would seem... I mean, I'm sure that they could, but it would be...
Like, I want to do more research on, like, Euro Disney and the planning of that, because it seems like the whole thing was just a giant disaster.
But it's really
I mean, I know
now.
it was. Yeah, it is now, but I know at the time it was like, what were you thinking? So, I don't know. I would like to research that some more. But there isn't one there, and there also isn't one in Shanghai, I think. And I
Correct
can't
me if he's
remember.
wrong,
Yeah,
please.
it's either Shanghai or Hong Kong, but there's one in every other park. So
Yes.
you have, and they're pretty much all the same, except for I think the one in Hong Kong is the one where it's at, and that one is just more like theatrical, and there's like a whole like big show at the end where it's like I think like a water god fighting a fire god or something. It's everything in that park is just way more theatrical than everything
Yeah.
else. But the one in Florida it's longer technically, but it's basically the same as the one in California. So I feel like I have ridden that ride just because there's not a lot of difference.
Yeah. And this is another ride that makes me, I mean, Disneyland is on our radar huge. We both really want to go. We want to see where it all started. It appeals to me a lot. Not that I would want to go. I want to take our kids, but it really appeals to me to go with you because it's one that we could tackle in just a couple of days. And it'd be really fun, but we have not been. So as we always say, we're strictly talking either from research experience or we're talking about Disney World experience when we speak about these rides and our own personal experiences. Yes. But we want to thank theliveplace.com. That is a really, really awesome website that our friend Dean hosts. He has a ton of amazing live streamers on there. We're one of them, but there's a ton of great people, family-friendly content, Disney-related content, all sorts of fun stuff, so definitely check it out. They have live streams all the time, and we are really grateful to be a part of that. We also want to thank you for watching and participating and hopefully commenting a whole bunch and sharing and liking and all that good stuff if you liked it. And binge watching, we like that too.
Thanks, Gigi.
Yeah, that's right. And if there is a ride or attraction that you would like Stefan and me, but mostly Stefan, to research and write a script for, then you can find him
at Small World Shirts Co. on the Instagram.
Yep, and I am at LeahTackles on Instagram. That is all linked in the description box, and you can also comment here if you have ideas as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. We love hanging out with you. We love doing this. It's so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
And we hope that you have a magical day.
See you real soon.
Bye.
Bye.